Wake up, wake up. Larry Krueger, Damon Bruce, brought to you by Sam's Chowder House. Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch are going to talk. What are they going to say? Big day in Ninerland. Let's go.
Well, he finally got past a very tight security outfit at Levi's Stadium. Larry, down at Levi's for this press conference that we're going to get today, and welcome on back to Wake Up. Damon Bruce, Larry Krueger, again, brought to you by Sam's Chowder House. And to those of you who were waiting to watch this one live, I mean, if we've already put this in the canon, you're watching it later, doesn't matter. But sorry that we're a little bit late today because Larry got held up by security at Levi's on a day where he had to get down there for this now impromptu press conference about serious changes happening in that coach's room. Brian Snyder, we learned on Monday, was out as special teams coordinator. That came several months too late, but huzzah, it actually happened. And Nick Sorenson has been demoted, but whether or not he's out still remains to be seen. And Larry, I know you're going to ask questions that'll be danced around and ignored. What I would like to know is what the last 24 hours conversations around Nick Sorenson's job really sounded like. Because, you know, when they let Snyder go and didn't include Sorenson in that press release, I thought Sorenson was going to be back. But then obviously something has changed. And then either it was the coaching market opening around the NFL for defensive coordinator options. It was an interest they heard maybe expressed by Robert Saleh to return. Maybe it was, hey, you know what? We really like Nick and we want to retain him. And if we demote him, he's not going to sour grapes his way out of town. So maybe we can do that. I really want to know what happened over just the last 24 hours that has Sorenson out as defensive coordinator, but not necessarily out of the building.
Well, I mean, Damon, you watch the games, right? They were horrible in situational football. And in the last 2 weeks of the year, when they were trying to say, hey, this is all a referendum on, we're going to finish fast and play hard and do well. They gave up, 87 points in the last 2 games of the year. 87 points, this just in, that's too many. And so I think the fact that they were horrible on third down, horrible in the red zone, horrible on short yardage, all these elements of situational football, in a lot of ways, situational football is coaching. I mean, that's what coaching is. Teams that are well coached are good at situational football. Teams that are not well coached typically are not good at situational football. So, last year, I think they wanted to go internal. They because the Super Bowl was over, they got a late start. They didn't have the same size pool of candidates to choose from, and they did the best they could do by trying to serve multiple masters. They wanted to keep their front four. They wanted to keep Chris Kasarik. They wanted to have that internal continuity. They'd gone with an outsider the year before in Wilkes. It had not worked out. Bosa was a big fan of Sorenson, as was Warner, and they went with Warner. But now this year, Damon, the defense has regressed. I think the job was too big, for Nick, and there are many more better candidates out there, including Robert Saleh, who would be a fantastic fit and would immediately give this team instant credibility on that side of the ball. And they need to build it up personnel wise, but Robert Saleh, I think, would be a name that would move the needle.
Well, and Josina Anderson is already reporting that he will essentially have a right of first refusal for the job, that the Niners are going to offer this job to Robert Saleh, who we know is going to be interviewing for the Jacksonville job. Did he do that yesterday or later today? There is another head coaching position apparently he's going to take an interview for. So if he were to interview for 2 head coaching positions, get neither, he certainly has a very good retreat point back to the 49ers. If I were Robert Saleh at that point, I'd tell Woody Johnson, those contracts are guaranteed. I'm going to go sit on a beach through another coaching cycle. I don't know if I'd want to go back to be the 49ers defensive coordinator if Saleh very much still considers himself head coaching material. So we'll see. It's all going to come out in the wash, and this wash is going to get done soon because carousel, coaching cycles spin quickly. Of course, the Raiders got into it, dead last by letting Antonio Pierce go as late into the cycle as humanly possible. That's just what the Raiders do. But this is the second time in 11 months that the 49ers are going to be changing defensive coordinator. It seems to happen almost annually, with success and failure being the catalyst for the change in a few different, situations. And, when you're in this press conference, if you're feeling like you're getting some real answers that matter, a question I would love you to ask is, is a new brand of defense coming in with a new defensive coordinator? Saleh feels like a re-embrace of a wide nine, but someone other than Saleh, I think, introduces other concepts. And that's something that Kyle's been reluctant to even discuss. It sounds like he's married to the wide nine, but in the last 24 hours, we've seen, at least through some insiders, saying, that the 49ers are, in no position to not consider everything based on the results that they just got from their plans. So one of the things that I was most wrong about this year, like, we can go back and we can check the tape of our, preseason wake-ups together, Larry, and I really thought that Brandon Staley, along with Sorenson, was going to introduce the idea of a little bit more of an accordion defense. Like, sometimes you'd be wide nine, sometimes you'd switch to 3-4, sometimes you'd switch to 5-2, sometimes it would just be more of a hybrid. I was totally wrong about that. That did not even come close to happening. And man, I wonder where Brandon Staley comes out in the wash in all of this too. Haven't even seen his name attached to a dismissal yet.
Well, I'll say this. I mean, I definitely think that it's more in pro football. I mean, on offense, maybe it's a little bit about your scheme and your play calling, but on defense, it's more about how you play the scheme than how you scheme the play. You know what I mean? To me, it's not, the wide nine worked just fine, in the past. And I realize there are people that are saying, hey, go to a 3-4. A lot of the top defenses in the league are a 3-4. But, really, to me, it's more about a regression of the personnel. And it doesn't matter if you play the 3-4, if you play a 4-3. The real problem is that you don't have enough players. And this is a defense that recorded 28 takeaways last year. That was fourth in the NFL. And this year, they only forced 17 turnovers. That was the sixth fewest in the league. I mean, that's a dramatic, to go from fourth in the league to sixth worst, basically, in a 32-team league is not, it's a dramatic drop. This defense used to be really, really good against the run, and they've given up 140 or more rushing yards in each of the final four games to finish this year. So they couldn't stop the run. They didn't take the ball away. That's a big part of it. So, now we're going to see, the different options as far as candidates. Some people have thrown out Jeff Ulbricht's name. He was recently the Jets interim head coach. He obviously played for the Niners. There's Robert Saleh, who was the Niners D coordinator from 2017.
I mean, they wanted to talk to Ulbricht, but Saleh and the Jets wouldn't let them get that interview.
Right. But I mean, if you could have Saleh, if the choice were Saleh or Ulbricht, you'd probably go with Saleh. Now, Saleh was fired by the Jets October 8th. And he's been coaching with the Packers, helping them out ever since. And then Indianapolis parted ways with Gus Bradley. Bradley runs this system if they want to stay with this system.
I think he's a very real candidate, Larry. I think he's a very real candidate for this job.
Yeah, I mean, Gus Bradley's got pelts on the wall. He's a very good coach. I've always been a big fan of Gus Bradley. I think he's a really good football coach. Now, he's taken some jobs I don't think were great jobs. Jacksonville comes into mind, but I mean, I think he knows defensive personnel. I think his defenses play hard. I think they're smart. I get the sense, though, that because they haven't announced a Sorenson firing, or I guess they did yesterday, but is from the defensive coordinator position, there's that talk that maybe they would hire him as the special teams coordinator. He was 3 years a special teams coach for Seattle, 2013, 14, and 15, and he was the special teams coordinator for Jacksonville in 2021. So maybe they'll go Sorenson and they'll switch his role over to special teams. If not, you're looking for a special teams coach and a defensive coordinator. And it'll be interesting to see if there are any other announcements today, either about contracts or retirements. You know, uh, different perspective on why they lost this year.
You think you're getting a full State of the Union today?
Well, I mean, usually I think we'll get some glimpse into, hey, we've watched our film, we got a pretty good idea, we think we need to upgrade this and that. I mean, usually they'll divulge something about what they didn't like, about some theme. Now, whether I'm not saying it's a coverall or an excuse, but there'll be some theme to the proceedings today. It won't just be like, hey, everything you already know. There'll be new ground plowed. I'm pretty sure of it today.
By the way, there's so much that people take away from professional sports and they try to apply it to their life, and it really doesn't. Professional sports operates on a level that real life doesn't really operate on. You can get away with murder in professional sports if you're good at what you do. I guess you can in business as well, and many times. But really, there's not too many lessons we can learn from pro athletes and apply them to our lives and get the same results. But there is a lesson in here I think that everyone could use, and it's why Nick Sorenson has a pulse still down in Santa Clara. Be liked in your life. Be liked. Be likable. Make friends. Have allies. Nick Sorenson coached his way to a pink slip. And the fact that he does not have one means that he is a very liked entity in that, franchise. I mean, they don't want him as defensive coordinator, but they think that he's kosher enough to accept a demotion with grace and maybe stick around in some coaching capacity, if not special teams coordinator. That's very much a testament to what they think of Nick Sorenson as a dude, as a person that they want to be around. Because it's really easy to fire someone you don't like. Obviously, it's harder to do that when you do.
Well, I mean, it's just like anything else. I mean, there have been guys who were great coordinators, but they weren't great head coaches.
Yep.
There were guys who were great position coaches, but they weren't great coordinators. So it all makes sense. Not every job's the same. And maybe Nick's a hell of a special teams coordinator, but the defensive coordinator job was, maybe he was not suited for it. I personally think that most of the problems that the Niners had this year on defense really didn't have to do with Nick per se. I wasn't like offended by the coverages or offended by the decisions.
I didn't like the communication breakdowns. To me, you talk situational football's coaching. Well, communication breakdown, that's definitely coaching. That's you guys not knowing what to do based on the looks you're getting, and everyone gets confused. Confused teams are poorly coached. But I'll agree with you. Had Nick Sorenson had Eric Armstead, DeForest Buckner, a healthy Dre Greenlaw, I promise you this entire year would have looked differently.
Well, I mean, also, where do you have communication issues on defense? It's not a front end deal. It's not a linebacker deal. Generally, it's a secondary deal. Where do they have lots and lots of young players? The secondary. So to me, I mean, the fact that they had communication issues in the secondary is just kind of par for the course. I just didn't like the fact that when they got no rush they got no sacks in 4 of the final 6 games, I didn't see any kind of creative blitz package. I didn't see them, take chances. They stayed in their very kind of conservative, we're going to do what we do mode, and just died. And it's like, you have, if you're going down, I want to see you fighting and, clawing for every possible inch and blitzing and trying to make something happen. I didn't see him trying desperately, creatively to make anything happen. They just did what they did and lost. So I wasn't really all that impressed by him. And I definitely wasn't impressed by him as far as a orator. He's not a impressive guy. Right. But, more than anything, I just think the 49ers need to have a a whole injection of talent. It's not, it's, you could have play any scheme, 3-4, 4-3, wide 9, standard 4-3. You could play some kind of three, you know, you could play like a constant dime if you want.
You run a brand new defense no one's ever seen before. Run a 110.
You gotta have dudes. You gotta have players. It's pro football defense. So that's where the 49ers, they've run out of players. They invested heavily in Hargrave. And then, that's fine that you kissed off 5 players for Hargrave, but it's not fine when Hargrave's out for the year in the middle of the year. Right. So then all of a sudden you don't have Hargrave and you don't have the benefit of all those other players that you depleted your roster to sign Hargrave. So that, anytime you go all in on a player and that player gets hurt, Christian McCaffrey, Javon Hargrave, Brandon Ayuk, there's going to be a price to be paid for that. And then you miss as much as they have at those two things.
Uh-oh. Larry, it sounds like we're losing a connection with you right now. So you just sped up.
I don't know.
There we go. Oh, you're back. You're back.
All I was going to say is just that almost all of the issues that they've, all the mistakes that they've made all result in being less deep as a team. And then when you compound those things together, that's that they just weren't deep enough this year. I mean, they had a pretty an okay offensive line, but not a lot of depth. They had an okay defensive line, but the second tier guys were really bad. They had okay linebackers, but as soon as they got to Devondre Campbell every week, it took a step back. They made communication breakdowns in the secondary because they're young. They only had 1 tight end on their roster worth a damn. Ayuk wasn't, the receivers fell apart and the young guys didn't emerge. There were a lot of negativity. McCaffrey wound up playing very little the entire year. He's, this incredible offensive player. So it wasn't perfect on any front, and you could blame Lynch, you can blame Shanahan, you can blame players. But to me, it was just too much to overcome. Then you mix in a short off season, the least rest, a first place schedule. There was a weird vibe from minicamp was normal, but from training camp on, there was this weird vibe of nobody's really happy. Ayuk's yelling, getting Shanahan or arguing over shorts. It just felt very not united.
And by the way, next time, should something like that happen and a team is trying to deny what is totally observable reality to the rest of us, maybe we should trust the rest of us more than what the team is saying, because we all saw this. And then after the fact, they've admitted it, that we were right. I mean, the fact that they remained with Brian Schneider as long as they did is offensive to competitive football. It really is. It's offensive to a team that's trying to compete. Players get cut for much less. Players get cut before they're the worst in football. And, Brian Schneider was allowed to exist in a universe where his unit was far and away the worst in football. And I think that trickles into the bad vibes. And, it's a little hypocritical to demand excellence from everyone, except anyone on special teams. You can be the biggest group of fuck-ups in football and nothing is going to happen. That to me is where this season lost a lot of steam and credibility.
It's weird though. It's all tied together because, like, for example, if the offense were totally cooking, then yeah, maybe you could be like, Sorenson's garbage, get him out of here. Or if the offense and defense were really awesome and that special teams was the one weakness, you could have said, get Schneider out of here, upgrade. But I think Shanahan kind of knows from doing this for a while that if you get rid of your special teams coach, the perception is you're saying, hey, it wasn't me, it was him. It wasn't the defense, it was the special teams. So I feel like almost, if the offense had been really going better, maybe he runs those guys out. But because the offense wasn't going great, it's like he kind of knows the perception is going to be like, well, hey, you guys are scoring 12 points against the Rams or whatever. You're hardly rolling. Um,
I hear you. I do. I hear you.
I'm not going to point at you when you can be
Right.
like, hey, it's you.
Right. I guess I hear what you're saying, but I'm also going to just go right to this is the NFL, and everyone's feelings can go fuck themselves. I don't care whose feelings are hurt on the way to playing better brand of football. I really don't. And sometimes you got to step on some feelings and egos in order to get, again, this locker room needed to be shook up this year, and Shanahan didn't grab it by its lapels and shake it. Not once, it doesn't seem.
I mean, I'll disagree there, but here's what I'm disagreeing with. Not that the locker room didn't need to be shook up, but it's like shaking up a room that doesn't have enough talent in it won't bring more talent into the room. So I know what you're saying. If I felt, and there are teams that there are teams that go half speed. If there were teams half speeding it and dogging it this year, I'm totally with you.
Yeah.
But I didn't necessarily see that. What I just saw was just not very good. I mean, they're just not very good. I mean,
I agree with
you. Winters is fast. He's just not great. Devondre Campbell is not great. I like Jordan Elliott. He tries hard. He's not great. He had to start. I mean, they've had a lot of guys, and then Fred Warner said it too, Damon. He said there's an awful lot of my bad this year, my bad. And to me, that's kind of like, it's like, that's usually when you're not good enough, that's what you say.
By the way, it's never bad down at Sam's Chowder House. Never for a minute, not for a moment. Get yourself down to Sam's Chowder House. We thank them for being an incredible sponsor of this show, and you will thank us for telling you to get yourself down to Sam's Chowder House for the lobster roll, the paella, the cioppino. It is undefeated. Nobody at Sam's is getting demoted. Nobody. That's how on point all of their units were this year. A question from Kevin. And Kevin, I'm not bringing this up to pick on you at all, but it's a legitimate question. He says, why would anyone ever want this defensive coordinator job? You're basically only hired for a year, then scapegoated for Kyle when things go wrong and can't be implemented into your own system. Okay, I understand it's really easy to look at it all negatively right now. Let's think about this from more than just the vacuum of one season. Kyle Shanahan has taken a couple of 100,000-aires and turned them into multimillionaires. And that's why you want this job. Robert Saleh, through the springboard of being the 49ers defensive coordinator, became a multimillionaire and has secured generational wealth for his family. DeMeco Ryans, exact same thing. Working for Kyle Shanahan is one of the best springboards to one of the most exclusive clubs in the world. NFL head coaches, only 32 dudes get to ever enter that club at any one time. And Shanahan is responsible for 3 of them. 3. Mike McDaniel, Saleh, and DeMeco. So there are a lot of reasons to come and catch Kyle Shanahan's blame if that's all you think the job entails. It can really pay off. So that's why, Kevin, more than anything else. Being a defensive coordinator for the 49ers is a great job. It's a great job. And the rewards can be immense.
Yeah, I mean, it's proven that you can surf this job to another job. But, these jobs change as the players change. You're only as good as your players, So this job was a better job 3 years ago when they had drafted better. And this job will be a better job if you can draft better. There's some interesting names out there. Now, Robert Saleh is one of them, and that's a definitely interesting name. But like Lou Anarumo is an interesting name from the Bengals. I mean, the Bengals did a nice job against Mahomes and Andy Reid in the playoffs. I mean, a lot of that's Joe Burrow, but it was also some of the defensive efforts that Anarumo's defense did. And Anarumo's a veteran. That's the one thing I would like to see is like, give me somebody who's done it before.
That's why I like Gus Bradley. I really do. Yeah. Gus Bradley.
I mean, all these guys.
12 years as a defensive coordinator, 4 years as Jacksonville's head coach, familiar with the NFC West. I like Gus Bradley. Like you said, you got to be in the right situation. Bad situation in Indianapolis this year. Bad situation in Jacksonville for him. I'll tell you the names I'm not interested in all. Like, I don't want any reclamation projects for Dennis Allen, who is a fucking loser. Dennis Allen's a loser.
Okay, I'll meet you there. I don't love that. I'll tell you what I don't love. I don't love Brandon Staley.
Oh no, yeah, no. Brandon's got to go. He is not the answer.
No Brandon Staley.
No
Brandon Staley. Look what happened to the Chargers defense this year after Brandon Staley left. They got the number 1 defense in football. So no, with a lot of the same players. So no Brandon Staley. I kind of like the idea of Saleh if Saleh wants to be here, because I think Saleh gives an energy that and an independence and a gravitas. I think it's got to be somebody with a big resume. Somebody who's been a head coach would be great. That's why Gus Bradley's good. That's why Saleh's good. I think either of those guys would be fantastic.
When Rex Ryan doesn't get the Jets coaching job, I wonder if he's still going to have a coaching itch that he wants scratched, or if this is just Rex Ryan knows that he can get an awful lot of attention by throwing his name into the New York media and the Jets, and they loved him before and blah, 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 blah. I don't know how sincere he is about a return to coaching, but for the Jets head coaching job. But if Rex Ryan were interested, he might be too much of a personality clash with Shanahan. Might be a little bit too much of a look at me guy to be a part of Shanahan's staff, but Rex Ryan does know defense. Absolutely, he does. I would have an interview with him. I would send an airplane to talk to Rex Ryan.
Yeah, I mean, talk to people for sure. I mean, and why wouldn't you? Why wouldn't you? I mean, he's had a lot of success. Be interesting to see, I should say. Do they stay with their Chris Kasarik wide 9 4-man front? Do they switch to a 3-4? Somebody threw out Ken Norton Jr. as a name. Dusty Gold says Ulbrich, or someone mentioned Ken Norton Jr. Lou Anarumo. I don't know. I mean, there's a lot of interesting names out there. Could be a younger guy that we're not thinking of.
By the way, Lou Anarumo looks young. He's not. He's almost 60 years old. He's just one of those younger looking older guys.
He's been doing it a while, hasn't he?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, the one thing is, if you look what you're up against. If you're going to win the Super Bowl, you have to first take a look at what you're up against. Like, what's it going to take, right? Is Nick Sorenson okay? I don't know. If you're trying to, win the WCAL, he might be more than okay. But who are you going up against? Oh, you're going up against Andy Reid, Steve Spagnuolo, Dave Taub, Patrick Mahomes, the Kansas City Chiefs.
State of the art.
Now, Kyle Shanahan, Kyle Shanahan on offense, that's your offensive guy. But I mean, how are you matching up with Spags? How are you going to match up with Taub, who's considered the best special teams coach? To me, you should be on the hunt for two things. A defensive coordinator who's got pelts on the wall, gravitas, a presence, preferably head coaching experience, and just instant credibility, who also has a good eye for personnel. That's one guy you should be looking for. And it might be Saleh, okay? The other thing you need to be looking for is the best young, unproven special teams coach in the country, college or pro, and go look for them. And there's some that have been in the pros that are now in college. Joe DeCamillis, I believe, is at Clemson. Very good special teams coach. Go find a special teams coach that is absolutely kicking ass on special teams. Go find the young star special teams coach and add him to your staff. Everybody hires people they know. Go outside of your circle and go find the best, most high energy, successful young special teams coach in the game and bring him in. Go, you know what I mean? Don't just call your buddy. Don't just have, oh, I knew him in Atlanta. That's too narrow of a scope. Go do your homework on who the best special teams coaches are and go get one. Because you've tried the retread route. You went from Hightower to Schneider. Schneider was good in Seattle. He was good in Seattle for 12 years, but he wasn't good here. Then you invested in special teams. You had a 3rd-round kicker, a 4th-round punter. You signed 3 or 4 free agents, all designed. Ray McLeod, George Odom, guys who were special teamers at their core. It didn't work, right? So now what do? Now I think what you do is you go look for a great young special teams coach. I'm suggesting Marty Biaggi from Notre Dame, but that's just one name. That's just one name. There might be a great young special teams coach in the NFL right now. I don't know if you could get him. You'd have to maybe make him like assistant head coach / special teams, but go get a really great special teams coach. Go get who I don't need him to be proven. I need him to be outstanding. I want a guy who's maybe you're hiring him a year or two before his time. Like he's the next great special teams coach that nobody knows about. Go find out who that is and bring that guy in, and then go get a defensive coordinator who's done it before. And then Kyle Shanahan, just focus only on the offense and not on personnel. Let your scouts do all the drafting. You just focus on play calling, play sequencing, and revolutionize your offense and change it by who you bring in at tight end and fullback and receiver. So, and running back. I mean, change what you do by the weapons that you bring in. You don't run the ball well inside the 5. Go get a power back. You're right now, you can't run in short yardage or on the goal line. Get rid of Juice. He's a big name, high price fullback who you can't use as a lead blocker. Use Garendo as your fullback in certain situations. Go get a big lineman and use that guy as your lead blocker, as your goal line guy.
Ask Dominic Pooney to be your fullback if you need one. Good Lord.
Nick Sakel. I mean, find a smart offensive lineman and make him your fullback and save a roster spot, or defensive lineman. There's a guy in this draft that I love named JJ Pegues, and JJ Pegues plays for Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin uses this guy on short yardage. And the reason he does is because he's 6'3", 318 pounds, but he's like one of those guys that he's just a gigantic body, but he's really a small guy. He's really got small man skills. So like this guy, even though he's 320, can get to full speed and pretty high speed in like 2 steps. It's one of the most freakish things I've ever seen. Anyway, they've used him, Damon, on short yardage and goal line. He's perfect. He's got like 6 touchdowns. He's got like 14 first downs. He has not been denied in short yardage. That is the kind of piece. He's a defensive tackle. So draft him, play him at defensive tackle, and use him in short yardage on offense. JJ Pegues. There you go.
I saw, some Dave Lombardi did some number diving, and, he's talking about how the 49ers' last 2 defensive coordinators had been one and done because they just can't stop the run. And that's what undid both these guys. Steve Wilkes' defense slipped from number 2 to number 26 EPA. And then Sorenson's defense slipped from 26th to 29th. So, Dave says stopping the run is an absolute foundation of what San Francisco does. Well, defensively, stopping the run is a foundation of what a Pop Warner team does. I mean, if you can't stop the run, you don't even belong on the football field as a defense. That is job one. You slow down the run, and then you make them pass it. That's what you do defensively. If a team is running all over you, you're dead on arrival. So,
well, I mean, football. I mean, football. I mean, it's either your D tackles or your inside backers or your safeties, right? Okay, so let's talk about that for a second. In the old regime, they had Jimmy Ward and Jaquaski Tart. Those guys were awesome against the run. those guys were like extra linebackers. They both hit like trucks. They both wanted to play the run. They both came firing up against the run. So when they had those two guys, they never got any interceptions.
And you know what? Yeah, you gave up a little in your secondary against the pass, but you were willing to do it because they were sledgehammers.
They were sledgehammers against the run, but they wouldn't catch an interception. So you got no interceptions, but you were great against the run. Okay, that was your secondary. Then last year, they were not good against the run because they didn't have an interior player who could anchor at all. So they had Greenlaw and Warner, but they weren't stopping the run up front with their defensive tackles at all, except for Armstead. And then when Armstead got hurt, it was a noticeable drop off. So this year they drafted Evan Anderson. So now actually Anderson was actually really strong against the run at the point from that nose guard interior defensive tackle position. But this year they didn't have Greenlaw. And the year before they didn't have Aziz. 3 years ago when they had Aziz, Warner, and Greenlaw and better defensive tackles, they were better, much better against the run. That's what it's going to take. It's going to take. Now you got Evan Anderson. That's a great plugger, but you got to move off of Hargrave. You got to find another big war daddy inside, and you got to find yourself a couple of really good, fast, instinctive linebackers who can make tackles. Not Demetrius Flanagan-Fowles, not Devondre Campbell, not the guys you got. You need some real dudes. You had some amazing line. I mean, Greenlaw, Aziz, and Warner, those are three of the best linebackers in pro football. Except now Greenlaw's out, and Fred's playing with a broken ankle, and Aziz, made a hit he shouldn't have made, but now everybody hates him. But he's still a great player. That's what they need. They need to go find their future Greenlaw, Warner, Aziz. That's really what they need. They need another defensive tackle. They need a big time. I think they have the safety in Mustafa, to be honest, and they need they just need a couple of big time linebackers. They're 3 interior players away, maybe 4, because you want to have some depth there, and it's a great draft for the interior players. So it's especially at defensive tackle, there's going to be all kinds of guys late in this draft that I mentioned to you that Watson for Florida, that defensive lineman who's 450 pounds. That's a guy that I would try to get an extra 7th round pick and draft that guy and see if you can use him. He's either as a nose guard on defense, as a run plugger. If you can get him to lose weight, he'd have to lose a lot of weight. Or if he doesn't lose a lot of weight, you use him as a center. My God, could you imagine that guy trying to run behind some 450-pound center? I mean, that's
if he can move. 450 sounds like you've eaten yourself out of the league. I mean, there's such a thing as you're too big. That is too big, probably.
He is too big.
Look, Larry, I know that you got an 11 a.m. presser that you've got to walk to, down a hallway to get to. We've got some supers. Let's go through them real quick, and then I'll invite everyone to join me and Cyrus at 11 here on Damon Bruce Plus. We're going to be talking a little Warriors Weekly. And then Larry and I will be back on Friday to set up Wild Card Weekend, not Super Wild Card Weekend anymore. It's just Wild Card Weekend, I guess. We're back to that. And
here we go.
Talking draft. Let's see. What do we got? Oh, welcome.
SGA Sports Talk channel is a new member. Corey Wiggs says, I hope they don't wait for Saleh and lose out on other candidates. Basically, we can be in the same situation we were in last year. Have a little faith, I'd say, Corey. Rita Thomas, member for 3 months. Blown draft picks, blown coaching hires. This rot starts at the top. Ooh, I like that.
I mean, I wouldn't say it's rot, though. It's not rot. I'm not looking at a rotten team full of incompetent, know-nothing derelicts. I'm just looking at a team that had been punching in the heaviest of heavyweight divisions and got a little punch drunk this year, and things went wrong. I'm not looking at incompetence or rot. I'm just looking at a good team.
Rita, I like the fire.
Rita's
pissed. The fire. I
it.
like the anger. Rita's pissed, and I'm all here for it. Fuji Simeon says, "Is Moody cut now?"
Bring up the rot in your first question today. Be like, who's rotting the fastest up here on this dais? Which one of you guys is rotting faster?
Excuse me, John, Kyle, Rita Thomas in the chat said that you guys are part of the rot. at the top of the masthead. Would you agree with that? With Rita? Something tells me something tells me they would not go for that. Fuji
What if
Simeon
they were
says,
like,
is
you know
Moody
what,
cut
she's
now?
right, we're bringing in Rita to be a draft consultant.
Rita Thomas, come on down. Fuji Simeon says, is Moody cut now or does he compete at camp? Oh, come on. I mean, just
it's time to walk away.
Put him out of his misery. Rita Thomas, 49ers announced that all Jake Moody jerseys will be shredded and airdropped over Arrowhead Stadium. Thomas from Stockton. Not really sure why that would be done, but thank you.
Okay.
Mike 824, just need to fire Staley and cut Moody. All right. It's like people we're taking the, you know what? Do we have new cabinets? No. Do we have new granite countertops? No. Do we have new appliances in the garage waiting to be put in? No. But do we have sledgehammers and people ready to knock everything out? Yes. Yes, we do. We are demolishing the Niner kitchen this morning. All right. That's what it feels like. We got this one from Fuji. Larry Damon, thoughts on the Verlander signing?
Kate Upton still got a very good ERA. I like it.
I knew you were going there. I would say I'll go from more of a baseball perspective than Kate Upton, since once again, all these people talking about Kate Upton. Are you going out with her? No. Am I going out with her? No. Why the hell do we care? You know,
yeah, she's nice to look at. She's a lot more entertaining than the Giants are for the most part. Just looking at her, if I got to look at something.
Okay, I mean, it's like, here's the thing, though. How excited do you? I like
the Verlander signing. I think Verlander, last cup of coffee in a big ballpark like that. Sure, I bet you Verlander's got an ERA under 4.5 all year and ends up leading the Giants in quality starts.
I love it because of, Hayden Birdsong and Kyle Harrison and Carson Whisenhunt and some of the young arms that the Giants have. Now you got a guy there who's just, such an unbelievable resource. And to be honest, Corbin Burns was going to cost so much. I'd rather go for a guy like this. And I hope they put Hicks back in the bullpen, because I think Hicks in the 8th inning would be absolutely amazing. And I'd like to see them go spend some money on like the polar bear. Bring in a guy like Pete Alonso, and now, maybe add 1 or 2 more pitchers, 1 outfielder. I think you're good to go. I think they can compete. I don't think they're going to beat the Dodgers, but I think they can compete. All right, let's go to this one here. We've got boxing fan ×4. Kyle needs an experienced veteran assistant head coach. I agree.
By the way, you see that Bill Belichick might be regretting taking that North Carolina job, and I guess some NFL teams might give him a call to see how really committed he is to going and coaching in college. So
they should. They should. He's a pro coach. Brian. Oh wait, what? There we go. Brian Perez just says, "Hey,
just
here's $1.99. $1.99. I always wondered about the 99s. That's going to do it for us. Good stream. Sorry I was late. If you could ask, here we go, Damon. Last question I have for you. You get one question for Kyle Shanahan. What is it?
Why did it take so long to make changes when it seemed so obvious change was needed all year long?
My one question for Kyle Shanahan would be, did you coach around your roster limitations as the year went on? Because you stopped you stopped even trying to run the ball inside the 5. I mean, who does that? Who gets to late in the year and stops running the ball inside the 5-yard line? They just stopped running. I mean, it was amazing. And there was a game this year. I mean, on the last Purdy game where he got hurt, 16 straight passes against Detroit.
And what I said, like Jake Brendel won the Bob McKittrick Award. Dude, Bob McKittrick's got to be rolling over in his grave Sorry, it's the truth though.
John Lynch, one question. Go. What do you got?
You got about 12 to 14 roster spots to play with. What's your priority? Because I looked at it. I did my big, who's back, who's out show just the other day. I've got about 16 open spots with both Moody and Mitch out too. I'm not bringing back Wichnowski either. I'm going a full flush on special teams. But he's got about 14 open roster spots to play with. What's your number one priority, John?
It's a good one. That's a great one right there.
And that is about it. Like, I know you got to get going and I got to get going. And we want to thank Sam's and everyone for being here once again. Sorry we got off to a late start, but that's how the cookie crumbled today. And if we can just leave on a serious note, what is happening in Los Angeles right now is terrifying. I mean, we're calling family members and people that we know down there and ask if they are in a path of danger. And some are saying yes, and some are saying no. Depending on which way 80 to 90 mile an hour Santa Ana winds are blowing. I mean, it is scary down there. So LA, I don't know how you're going to be hosting an NFL game this weekend because there's some serious, scary things happening in LA right now. So we're just thinking of everyone down there. We hope that everyone stays safe.
Yeah, no question. Thoughts and prayers to everybody down there. And, really it's a perspective shaker, but it's just life.
Right.
So our thoughts and prayers.
Here's the thing. It's one thing to have your house burnt down. Entire neighborhoods are being burnt down. High schools are gone.
You're talking about some of the most beautiful. Sorry about that. We're talking about some of the most beautiful real estate in the world and all the loss of life potentially there and property. And it's just ugly. Yeah. I've been watching the images. I heard Steve Weish on KMBR talking about it today. Obviously the NFL Network's based down there. So he's based right down there. I mean, the Rams, I think, are not going to be practicing outdoors today. They're going to be practicing indoors. I don't know how the city of LA is going to host a NFL playoff game this weekend, but they are. And I mean, it's just it's the unthinkable. So anyway, we'll leave you on that note. Thanks to everybody. Have a great rest of your day. Later on the Krug show, we'll have some breakdown down here in Santa Clara from what went on. Join me at 6:00 tonight on KMBR for Niners Nightly, and John Dickinson is going to stop by at 6:30. So we'll get JD's thoughts on the stories of the day. It should be a very interesting day. For Damon, I'm Larry. Thanks to Sam's Chowder House. Thanks to all of you. Have a great day. Go Niners.